Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of BSD Synergy. This week's episode is titled HardenedBSD at Work. I'm your host Mason Egger, and let's just go ahead and jump on into it. So, this week's episode is over HardenedBSD. It was another viewer-suggested video, and I had never really taken the chance to look into it, and I'm really glad that I did now. So, a little bit of brief history about HardenedBSD. It began in 2013 as a starting point for a project to get ASLR, or address-spaced layout randomization, into the FreeBSD system. Eventually, they found out that upstreaming ASLR into FreeBSD was proving more difficult than it was really worth. There was a lot of drama, and I just got done reading all of the old archives of emails and stuff about it, and there was a lot of drama around ASLR. So eventually, what ended up happening was the person who had worked on it, Oliver Pinter and Sean Webb, I believe, eventually just stopped the project, stopped trying to upstream it, and devoted it all to HardenedBSD, and said that FreeBSD was free to, pull from HardenedBSD whenever they wanted, but they were going to work on a more security-enhanced version of FreeBSD. And what started as one project, a small thing, obviously, eventually morphed into a rather large project, and now there are lots of security enhancements in HardenedBSD for all types of security mitigation, and, basically creating that onion of security, layers and layers of security, to hopefully, protect your system. So they currently have two releases. They have a 10 stable release and an 11 stable release, depending on which version of BSD you want to use. These releases happen relatively often. They're constantly doing new builds. For example, the most recent stable build released of HardenedBSD was on January 29th of 2017 for security updates, mostly dealing with OpenSSL. So if you want to see the kind of features that they have for security and all of that compared to the other BSDs, HardenedBSD actually has a really easy page. It's on their front homepage. Easy feature comparisons. And as you can see here, they do a lot. They have address space layout randomization, base compiled at the position independent executables. This, I watched an interview. This has to deal with statically linking things and such to make sure that basically dealing with ports and making sure packages can actually use the randomized address space. Base compiled with all sorts of, I honestly don't know a lot of these. Ports tree compiled. That's cool that when I watched an interview with Sean Webb on BSD Synergy about it, and they were really, like, at the time, back in 2014, I don't think they had this done yet, but it's good to know that they have it done now. ASLR brute force protection with seg vguard, which is good. You combine these two together, you get quite a bit of good stuff. And then a whole bunch of other stuff. sysctl hardening, network stack hardening, boot hardening, trusted path execution. There's something in here about, there it is, right executable, part 1 and part 2. And as you can see, HardenedBSD has the most of the security features, next followed by OpenBSD. The OpenBSD people are usually pretty good about all of this stuff, so it makes me, looking at this and knowing, who is behind all of this, makes me feel good about my decision. OpenBSD. NetBSD has some things. Now, the FreeBSD line is a little bit empty, which after all the drama they dealt with in ASLR, that's probably just an after effect of it. They didn't really, what started out as a project to help the FreeBSD project, I don't think any of it ever actually went in, which is a waste and not a waste at the same time. I was honestly, whenever I was researching this video, I was shocked to find out that FreeBSD didn't have ASLR. Like, everybody's had it for ages. Like, Linux has had it in the kernel since 2.6. There's a lot of things. I remember doing a project in school where we were, our teacher was teaching us buffer overflow attacks in a security class, and we had to turn off the randomization, or we couldn't do it. Apparently, Linux's ASLR is relatively easy to defeat, and actually most ASLRs are relatively easy to defeat. But still, the fact of not having it, or, the fact of saying, we don't want it because it's already been defeated, is like saying, why do we have doors? I mean, people can just kick them down, so why even put a door on my house? I don't know. I read a lot of the drama and a lot of the posts and the forums, and it was nasty. And quite honestly, I'm slightly disappointed by the way the FreeBSD community handled this. But I'm not a security expert. I'm not a C expert by any means. So whatever happened in there, that's their thing. I'm just going to continue to report it as I see it. So they do have a handbook. It's basically the FreeBSD handbook with like an added chapter. It hasn't really been worked on since like November. I understand, what's the last thing that anybody does? It's documentation. But it's relatively easy to get to. It's interesting. It tells you all about the HardenedBSD stuff that you can implement. Page exec and mprotect, SafeStack, which I don't really know what that is. I've heard mixed reviews on SafeStack, but again, security is layers. That's definitely something that they taught me in my security class in college, and it's definitely stuff that I've dealt with through work. Is that one layer isn't enough, and even if that layer is defeatable by a certain percentage, maybe the next layer won't be. And the idea of not having these layers because they've been defeated before is asinine. It's the door metaphor all over again. Like, why do we have doors? If people can just kick them in. So we have them because it's a moderate deterrent for most people. So there's that. But it's a nifty project. I definitely enjoy it. If you have any extra money and you want to donate, they definitely do need donations right now. They have a wiki. It's a GitHub page. So I do know that, like, if you look at the team is really small. It pretty much is run by Sean Webb and Oliver Pinter. They have some devs, which is, this is a subset of the developers and 2 others. People that have contributed, which is nice. And these are people that have retired from it. Interesting enough. The roadmap is actually relatively interesting because we're going to get some really interesting things coming up. Network installable installation media. That'll be fun. Mirrors for both packages. Maybe a sec ADM. I don't know if they actually done this. This is the roadmap for 2016. And the last time they talked about this was... Yeah, this roadmap's behind. They have an 11.0 release. So, I don't know how much of this roadmap is actually valid anymore. But, they got a lot of this done. I know they got that done. Like, we saw it in the other things. So, this roadmap's out of date. Hopefully they'll update it. I'd really like to know where the project is going. It seems like an interesting project, and it might have converted me. And I don't know. I showed it to another couple of friends of mine, and they're really excited about it. So who knows? Maybe HardenedBSD will be the way we go. Packages. They have their own. Look, they host their own FreeBSD package repository. But they just only seem to have one for 11. And that's the packages. Interesting. Okay. They're probably compiled with like that Pi thing. That's probably what this is because you probably couldn't pull directly from the FreeBSD package tree anymore because they have to be compiled with a certain compiler flag so that the ASLR will work. So that's probably what that's for. Now, why they don't have it for 10, I don't know. But honestly, have to go to 11. It's time for 11. So like the demo today will be on 11. From the look at the GitHub page, it seems like they're hard at work. Like as of recording this video, the ports were updated 22 minutes ago. So it seems like they definitely are keeping this as an up-to-date fork of FreeBSD, a security enhanced fork of FreeBSD, which is really interesting, really nice to know. So they have 6 people on the project. Yeah, there's Sean and Oliver. Don't know who these people are. So let's go ahead and get over to the demo. We're going to be installing 11.0. And here we go. We have our HardenedBSD and options. We can deal with the kernel. That probably has to deal with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh. You can easily toggle between kernels. I actually don't know what that is. I'll have to look that up. I do know that I would take a guess and say that this is most of these security options are off by default. Maybe kernel.old is with them off and default kernel is with them on, or these are maybe they fork the kernel now and they're actually so they might have a new kernel. It might not be like the FreeBSD kernel anymore. It might be their own kernel. Interesting. I don't actually know. Oh nope, wrong button. And I go to get back to the menu, type menu. There we go. Let's go ahead and boot. Okay, so there's some ASLR and SegVgar going on, and so that's definitely different than what I would typically come to expect from FreeBSD. So it looks like they either was checking for them or they're already on. I think when they first started the project, the idea was for them to be default off. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're default off. Okay, but they might be on now. Let's go ahead and install. Let's click inside the VM so we actually can hit enter. Install. Looking for key map files. Hostname, BSD Synergy. The base system with debugging. Additional documentations, kernel debugging, system source, and test suites. Well, we'll always do docs for fun. It does do ZFS. We're going to do guided UFS because ZFS on a 10 gigabyte hard drive with only one drive doesn't really work that well. So we're going to use the entire disk. Oh, look, it tells me down there. Bootable on most x86, x86 with EFI and ARM64. BSD labels, Power PC, Apple hardware, PC98. Doesn't look like it has hardware detection. Interesting. Or I just don't understand what this is. Both are possible. Go ahead. Commit it. System hardening. Interesting. Hide processes running as other users. Hide processes running as other groups. Disable reading kernel message buffer for unprivileged users. Disable process debugging facilities for unprivileged users. Insert StatGuard page of head of the growable segments. Clean the /temp file system on system startup. I like that. Disable opening syslogd network socket. Disables remote logging. I mean, I guess if you're not using it, turn it off. Disable sendmail service. Okay, well, that's interesting. Would you like to add users to the install? Yeah, sure, why not? Is it still gonna try to... Did I get to it in time? I always typically miss it. Yeah, that's my fault. That's what happens when you remove the disk. Okay, let's reboot it. Is there a restart button over here? Reset, right? There we go. I always try to remove the disk, and I never get to the dang disk in time. Oh, it did say opt out. So all of those options are currently opt out. So they are off by default. It's good to know. Okay. Let's go ahead and log in. Okay, so interesting motd. Keywords, CTO. So we don't have Python. The package management tool is not yet installed. You have to fetch and install it. Bootstrapping. Okay, so it automatically knows to go. It is pulling them from the repo that we saw on their website. So that's interesting. Verifies the certificate. Nice. I like that. Looks like it's building the whole PKG system. Oh, yeah, it is. Okay, yeah, go ahead. libffi. It's Python 2.7. Oh, when will we get to Python 3? Hopefully soon. I've been trying to modernize all my stuff into Python 3. Okay, note that standard library Python modules are provided by separate ports. Yeah, that's typical. Okay, so Python. Well, now we have Python. Just for y'all. And there you have it. We have a hardened BSD system installed and ready to go. Well, everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, go ahead and leave me a like. If you want to see more of me or have friends that want to see more of me, go ahead and send them to subscribe and have them subscribe to me. That really does help me out. You know, it gives me a little smile. I get an email. Oh, look, I have a new subscriber. Yeah, makes me happy. If you want to contribute to the channel, you can go ahead and contribute down below. And as always, I'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.